Welcome to the SwineTV.com producer hot stove report brought to you by SwineWeb.com. The process of the roundtable is to have an engaging and fluid chat about hot topics in the pork industry. Each guest will be broached with different topics that they can express their views and opinions, and the floor is open for any producer to chime in and join the discussion. We're going to introduce each producer, have a quick bio, and get on with the chat. So Tork and Sawyer Whisler, owners at This'll-Do Farms in Northeast Iowa.
Yes, I'm Tork and this is Sawyer, and we're contract finishers for a operation out of Southeast Iowa, and then we also do a podcast of our own and some social media and grain farm also.
Adam Walters, pork finishing manager at Tosh Farms in Henry, Tennessee.
Yes, sir. I've been at Tosh for 15 years, and I'm overall the wean to finish and sales at Tosh.
Wanda Patsche, wean to finish pork producer from Martin County, Minnesota, 6,400 head a year.
Yeah, so my husband and I, we have a wean to finish unit at our home site. We're part owners of a cell unit, probably about 15 miles from where we live. We crop farm. I'm also active in social media. I'm really promoting the advocacy of agriculture. So I blog at Minnesota Farm Living. Yeah, so keeps me busy.
Shane Mcauliffe, owner of Mcauliffe Farms in Kerry, Ireland, 2,000 sows.
Thank you. Yes, so my name is Shane Mcauliffe. My family are pig farmers. We have 2,000 sow farrow to finish across 4 different sites, including Ireland's first loose lactation farm. So welfare, very, very important here in the European context, and we face many, many challenges in Europe. So looking forward to having a fruitful discussion with you all tonight.
Melissa Larson, owner of Black Gold Family Farms, a Berkshire only operation in Northeast Colorado with 80 sows.
We got started mostly in 2015, 100% Berkshire sow operation, just me and my husband. We got 5 young kids and they're all pasture raised. We do farrow to finish. We then sell the product to a large national grocery store chain in Colorado and customers as well.
And Mark Slack, owner of Slack Farms in Tweed, Ontario, Canada. Currently, he's dealing with an expansion, building 2,400 finishing spaces and 1,200 nursery spaces.
Oh, actually, that's what we have. We have a wean to finish barn right now. It's we finish our gilts in about 4,000, 4,500 gilts a year into Ontario customers and balance to slaughter hogs. And we are building a 625 sow barn with 600 nursery spaces. The theory on that is there'll be purebreds, and the F1s will come into our existing finishing barn, and we'll be able to fill the contracts we have now with our F1 gilts.
Yeah, so let's get right to it. Tork and Sawyer, Tyson Smithfield and Hormel, they're investing in artificial meat. Do they have hog producers' best interests at heart?
Yeah, that I hadn't really thought about that, and I was reading the other day of investment in meat substitutes, and it really got us spitballing about, with the labor issues within the industry. I feel like these guys, they're hedging all their bets, and they're probably thinking, if we can produce a product and not have to fight the labor problems and the OSHA problems and find all these animals and deal with the negative connotations that some people in social media portray them as, that probably looks fairly lucrative to them. Or maybe I shouldn't say lucrative, but
I would say lucrative.
Yeah, and
It's definitely lucrative. It's cheaper for them to make, and yeah, it just eliminates all the headaches they have to go through to actually produce a pork product. And so The question you asked is, do they have our best interest in mind? I don't really think they do when it comes to that. I mean, I don't think they're going to come out and say that they're really going towards that because they don't want to make people panic, but they're not stupid. They know where consumers are heading. And I don't think all consumers will head that way. But I think smaller USDA facilities will have bigger advantage, or they'll have an advantage, and they'll have a place in this new kind of world that we're going to head towards, because for a long time, the packers have kind of owned majority of the packing business. And I feel like more and more USDA facilities, smaller, will get an opportunity to get in on this.
Yeah, I feel like your large packers and your large food processors, they haven't done, and I don't feel like they have any interest in telling the story of from the farm to fork. They've just kind of, they just don't want to deal with that. And I think there'll be a huge niche there to be filled. It's just a matter of whether or not, how much of that chasm is going to get filled.
I got a question for you. So USDA approves packing houses. Well, maybe I'll explain Canada and then you can tell me if yours is the same or not. So we have provincial inspected plants that can only market their animals in the province that they're inspected in. And then we have federally inspected plants that can market in any province and can export. Is it similar in the US? You have state approved and then.
Yeah. So they have state.
Yeah,
Exactly like that. They have a state approved
Okay.
facility that you can only sell the meat inside that one state. And then the USDA is inspected every day that they slaughter. And then you can export out of that state to any state.
so today there's quite a few USDA inspected plants that can sell within a state, any given state. But if you want to move that product across state lines, that list gets real tiny real fast.
So in the province of Ontario, there's 4 federally inspected plants. One is the University of Guelph, so they don't export anything. Right. It's for research. The second is or one of the 4 is a small plant that only kills I'm going to say organic or a very, very small stream. And then the others are, one's a packer-owned plant and the other is a multinational. So the same thing, very, very, the list gets short and hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that in the future, I don't know, they're trying to pass bills and stuff to allow more USDA facilities to open, because I think the whole COVID crisis caused a lot of panic for a lot of people. And they realized that was kind of scary, that we had to shut down massive packing plants and we need more USDA inspected facilities that are just a little bit smaller.
Yeah. The supply chain issues, I think have brought that more to the forefront, that more would be better as far as being able to service across state lines, at least.
Yeah, same here.
So Wanda, you've experienced PRRS 144, 174 recently?
Yeah, 144 is it just does not want to leave our area at all. And it's perennial. I mean, it's here continuously. So just to give you a little preface, the county I live in is very hog dense. I mean, we've got a lot of hogs. We're #1 pork producing county in Minnesota, and we're actually ranked nationally. So that definitely has an effect on that. So we're right in the midst of a PRRS break at our sow farm, and we're actually due to get pigs. So I think we got like 1,500 last week and end up having to buy them from a farm in Ontario because our sow farm did not have enough pigs didn't have enough pigs to supply us. And so actually today, as we're speaking, we've got the second load of pigs coming. We're hoping that there's no issues at the border because we've been hearing some rumors that at Ontario with the border that there is possibly some conflict. So we haven't heard anything from our truckers. So we're hoping things are a go. So yeah, so the 144 is really a big issue right here. Going forward, what does this look like? I can tell you that you won't see any more sow farms being built in this area. What the trend is that we're building, or I should say farmers are building sow farms probably 300, 400, 500 miles away, more north and northwest, where there's no other pigs, which is a smart idea. Finishers, we may see a few more finishers built down here, but definitely not sow farms. So that's the trend we're seeing.
You're dealing with that too, Adam?
Well, Jim, this past year, our multiplier unit got PRRS. And of course, that's the last unit you want to have PRRS in. But, they went in, vaccinated the farm, and just to get everything at the same playing field. And then all the wean pigs were tested. And once they started being born negative, we could ship them back out. But that probably, we were dealing with that for probably 4 or 5 months. And on the wean to finish end of it, we just tightened up our biosecurity because we're lucky where we're at. We're not in a very pig dense area. It had to be brought in from somewhere else. So you look at where all the foot traffic is, and we tightened up the biosecurity at our wash bays with our truck drivers and with my managers going in and out of farms.
Yeah, one of the other things we're doing, kind of a management change here in pretty much all the sow farms that are located in this area, going to batch farrowing. Supposedly, we're told that should help with PRRS. So if you do have an outbreak of PRRS, that helps with that. We're really new into switching to batch farrowing. So I guess we'll see what time will tell whether that really helps or not.
And Melissa, so you're into Berkshire only. Why do you feel Berkshire meat quality supersedes market pork?
What do I feel it supersedes?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, not all Berkshire are created equally. I mean, they were brought over here, I think, in the 1800s, I believe, and they were kind of considered the Wagyu of pork. But, over the years, I'd say the genetics have been pretty watered down, and they are not like the old school Berks used to be. We've really worked hard, probably over the last, 3 years, 4 years actually, bringing in some old line genetics into our herd. I mean, superseding as far as meat, I'd say you eat with your eyes first. So, I mean, if you had a visual of just looking at a Berkshire pork chop and a supermarket pork chop, just your regular commodity pork, the visual alone, stands out because Berkshire is kind of a deep pinkish to red color with, inner muscular, inner marbling and fat. And, then basically the flavor, it comes from it basically comes from what you feed the animal, and it's primarily stored into the fat. So Berkshire, they tend to have a little more marbling than most commodity pork. I don't know what you call the confinement pork. It tends to have more marbling, more back fat, and that just makes the meat juicier, richer, it's more tender, in my opinion.
Anyone else have any comment?
I think something that producers need to focus on a lot is improving meat quality. And it is very, very important going forward. And as we see consumer tastes changing a lot, it's important that we move with the times and become innovative. And something that we do here, we've done a lot of research into feeding a natural seaweed extract to the pigs, to the finisher pigs. And what that did was it increased the antioxidant level in the meat. It also reduced the need for nitrites and nitrates, and it also increased the shelf life of pork. So basically, it was giving the consumer a more healthier product.
So Mark, you're in Eastern Ontario. Most of the pigs in Ontario are Southwestern Ontario. What challenges does that present? And then recently during COVID, you built and expanded during a pandemic, building material issues. What was the journey like?
That's a big question. So Eastern Ontario, we were just described by one of the vets in Western Ontario as the most biosecure farm in the province. So take that with a little grain of salt, but we're very isolated where we are. I am not sure if there's another pig in the county, and we bridge 2 counties. So there might be one other hog farm possibly. 2, come to think of it, 2, but in the southern part of the county. So we have no hogs around at all, primarily cow-calf operations in our area. The great thing about being biosecure is you're a long ways from anything. The bad thing about being biosecure is you're a long ways from anything. So we've got freight is the issue whenever we talk about anybody that has anything to do with us. So, and being isolated from Western Ontario, there's no big feed mills. There's the infrastructure for that is in Western Ontario. So it's trucks on the road and so on and so forth. That's how that kind of balances. Looking down the road, we will probably look at milling our own feed to remove that as one of the costs involved. Building a new barn during COVID, that has been a bizarre experience right from the get-go. Lumber prices basically tripled. Products were ridiculously short shelved. Convenient excuse, really. We are still waiting on products that were ordered and paid for in November. So shipping delays with containers. I mean, it's been interesting. We're not going to do it again real soon. Anyway, but other than that, it's the people that build barns in Ontario are tremendous people. They're good to deal with, and the trades have been very understanding, and we have to be understanding as well to deal with what they're dealing with. But it moved along reasonably quick. I think we would be definitely have pigs in there. I think if it had been a normal building season, I guess. But anyway, that's kind of it in a real tight nutshell.
Labor shortage, has it affected that, Mark? I know Tork, you guys have had some issue with the labor shortage as well.
Yeah, I think that at least, here in Iowa, it's the same demographics that people talk about in agriculture as far as the producers. Within the system that we're in, I mean, I would probably be one of the younger guys as far as people that are feeding pigs, and I'm 50. And in my prior role, working with the integrator that we now feed for, part of my job was contracts and changing contracts. A lot of guys would start out wean to finish, and as they got older, they decided that they didn't want to pick up pigs anymore, and they'd want to switch to a feeder pig contract. But then eventually the conversation over the last few years, there's just more and more and more guys that can't find load crews, can't find people to help. Their kids aren't, back farming with them. And they get to a point where they want to know whether we'd be interested in basically triple net leasing the barn and providing the labor and utilities. And it's not so much because that's the direction they want to go as much as it is that they have to go. And, we see it now in the trucking side, the schedule. We used to get, if we were on the slate for pigs to go out and we got a schedule on the Friday before, you usually would get one version. And today you might get 4 versions because they're not 100% sure who they're gonna have truck all these pigs, or whether they're gonna have all their guys to truck. And it's just, labor is getting to be a bigger and bigger issue. And then the other side of it is, how good is the quality of labor that you can hire, which that's an even scarier proposition, because you're dealing with a live animal. We've talked about this many times. You're not building widgets. You have to have people that you can depend on if you're not the one. And the quality of the labor is as much of an issue as the quantity.
So Shane, in Ireland, what are the challenges compared to around the globe and how they affect North America? I know you talked about energy and feed price increase.
Yeah, so Ireland, I suppose, as it is an island, we actually have the highest feed costs in Europe. And at the moment now, our break-even price is about €1.85, and the price we're getting for our pigs is about 142, 144. So your average 600 sow unit is losing about €35 on every single pig. So yes, the feed cost is the really, really big issue. It's a struggle for smaller farms at the moment with a couple of hundred sows, because if they go to a financial institution looking for money, well, they don't have the repayment capacity, because the feed prices we expect are going to continue to rise. We saw last week where Russia banned the export of ammonium nitrate. They're the largest producer in the world, supplying over 2/3 of it. That's going to have a huge impact on fertilizer prices and on grain prices. The ongoing issue in Ukraine is also quite problematic. Ships aren't getting into Ukrainian ports, so you're not getting Ukrainian wheat out of there. And like you just said there, the labor is a huge issue at the moment. COVID and Brexit related problems saw shortages of staff in processing facilities. And now we're seeing huge slaughter capacity issues here at the moment. Very, very difficult to try and get your pigs slaughtered. Everyone is getting loads cancelled at the moment. And what we're hoping for here in Ireland is that we get an emergency bailout package, emergency aid, emergency support. And we've seen it now in the last fortnight, the likes of France. France has offered 270 million euros to their producers, Poland offering 88 million. So the pressure is on here in Ireland. We're hoping that within the next week or two that there is an emergency package, because the market here is very cyclical. You have lots of ups and downs, but there's nothing like this ever seen before. And unfortunately, it will be survival of the fittest. And a lot of farmers just won't survive this downturn. So that is why we're hoping to get some much needed cash into the industry to help support farmers.
So Adam, utilizing technology to manage production. So digital barn sheets are popular now. There's apps like Every Pig that lead to more efficient technology. What's your take or experience with that?
I've worked with a few of them. I think Farmera is one of them, and that goes over the day-to-day temperatures and the log sheets for the contract growers. But we're working on something internally where all of my techs, all the managers, all their reports, all the feed tickets, all the shipping tickets, everything will be done through a portal on our website. So we're going paperless. And long story short, at the end of it, it'll put all the information from the feed tickets to the shipping tickets to the service reports, any notes that's been on that farm, would put it in one place, because we have all this great data, but this will just put it all in one place. And it'll also act as being able to close our farm out at the end of the turn, because it'll keep up with the inventory and everything. And right now, we're a few weeks away from getting our sales schedule set up with it. We sell around 120 top hog loads a week, have 20 winter pig movements. And so all that's going to be in there to where my marking techs, whenever they go to mark the load, they'll go to that portal, they'll send it out, it'll notify the driver, me, Swift where we're sending it to, and also the grower. So everybody's automatically knows what pigs are marked and where they're at. And I just look at that as trying to increase communication, because that's the thing that everybody lacks in the most, is just sharing information.
Does anybody else have experience with this kind of technology?
Well, here in Ireland, the computer package we're using at the moment on our farms is AgroVision, but we are moving to a Danish company called Cloud Farms. It's a cloud-based system, and it seems that it will work a lot better for us here. We're also in talks with another computer company in the Netherlands about a product they have. Although I have met, when I've been over in Canada and the US, I've met Matthew from Swine a few times, and also I've met Chris from Every Pig. So I've learned about what you guys are doing there. But data is the way forward. And I think one of the big things we'll see here in Europe is that, pork raised without the use of any antibiotics at all is going to be quite important. So it will be essential that we'll be able to track those pigs through the supply chain, as opposed to your standard pigs who may receive a treatment of antibiotics. I think it's important going forward.
So Wanda, you have a popular blog that we host on Swine Web. I know you've got a good community. You've written about Prop 12. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so Proposition 12, of course, is the California ballot initiative that was voted on by the citizens of California. Basically, they've come up with some arbitrary requirements as far as space goes to raise not only hogs, but also poultry. And, the issue is in order for all of the farms in the United States to adapt to that, I just read a report this morning that was done by the University of Minnesota. They're looking at between $2 and $3 billion that would need to be spent to raise those, housing requirements to that level. So it's not a good thing, and we're not going to be compensated for that. So if we make those changes, yes, going forward, I would say people that are building new sow barns are going to have that incorporated into the space requirements. But here's my concern. So we all know that ballot initiative, we know that it was animal rights activists that were behind that, and the way that ballot initiative was written. My concern is that let's just say that we have to adapt to those regulations, those space requirements. What's next? I mean, we know that animal rights activists, their ultimate goal is to eliminate animal agriculture. So I feel like it's kind of a slippery slope. I mean, we do that, and then what's next, and what's next after that? So I'm a little bit worried about that. I do hope that this case does go to the Supreme Court. I don't think that would be a bad thing. I just have a hard time with someone living in Los Angeles telling me in Welcome, Minnesota, how to raise my pigs. I just don't, to me, that I just can't wrap my head around that. I mean, there's no better people to raise hogs than farmers. I mean, we're out there every single day, multiple times a day, taking care of those animals. So it's definitely not a care issue. Like I said, we're out there with them. So, and I know right now they've kind of got they pushed it off because it was supposed to take effect January 1st, but they really didn't have the rules laid out, which made no sense. And so now they've kind of pushed that off in California. But again, I hope that it goes to the Supreme Court and that they take a look at that.
I think something to be mindful of in North America is that, usually what happens here in Europe first in terms of welfare changes, it happens in North America maybe 10 years later or so. Like, for example, loose sow housing came into legislation here in the European Union in 2012. And now we're seeing that farrowing crates are going to be phased out as well across the European Union. But a question for you, Wanda, there's a lot of discussion about this at the moment, but, let's say here in Ireland, we only have a specific number of companies who specialize in pig equipment. and each company can only do a certain number of retrofits each year, maybe 2 or 3 farms. But I'm just wondering, what is the situation like in Minnesota? What is the capacity of, specialized equipment providers being able to make changes in the different states? Because that also is something to be very aware of. And while, the federal government might say, okay, you have to have them phased out by this certain date, it physically just won't be possible if the equipment providers just can't do it.
Right. Actually, that's a really good question. And I don't know if I can answer that, but it's definitely something to be mindful about. We have one egg, or I should say hog equipment facility here, probably about 4 miles from where I live. It's called Henway Manufacturing. In fact, that's where all of our gates and feeders and everything came from that. But it's a very small manufacturing facility, very small. But that's actually a really good point, that will probably end up being an issue if that's the direction. I just have a hard time. I get the point that this is what consumers want. But how do they know what they want? You know what I mean? I don't know. And that's really one of the reasons why I'm active on social media, telling my story. We need everybody to do that. I'm doing more video, this is what we do, and this is why we do what we do, but again, we're such a small percentage, and I'm not even a drop in the bucket. But I don't know how else to tell that, to tell that story. And, that, we're not cruel to our animals, really, we're not, So, but I take your points. I definitely think that's going to be an issue if that's the direction we go. So.
So Melissa, you have a really cool kind of family operation and an aggressive 5-year plan to double your herd. You just touched.
Is that aggressive?
I think so, yeah. The whole
Okay.
Whole Foods plan. What's the plan for you guys?
Well, we initially started out, it's just a family thing. We wanted to create a business where me and my husband could work from home, not have to go into an office every day. We could work on the farm at home, have the kids. And, we started out with about 60 sows. We're only up to 80 right now, but we are initially only working with Whole Foods. This year, maybe into part of next, we'd like to double our operation and be able to sell the other half to consumers in Colorado. We've hooked up with a guy that's got a facility that right now he's just waiting on the paperwork for the USDA. Unfortunately, that seems to be dragging its feet a lot with a lot of people. So he's got the facility, it's state inspected, he's got all the paperwork filed for the USDA, but it's been 4 months and still waiting. So we've got the pigs, and it's just doubling our herd would allow us to sell directly to customers, than just the grocery store chain, because you never know when the grocery store chain is going to cut you out eventually.
Would you go direct to consumer?
We do right now. We're in Colorado here. We're able to sell half and whole hogs directly to customers. It's basically called an animal share. They buy the animal, and then we can get it processed for them and then give it to them.
So Mark, one of your reasons for expansion is you've got your son that farms with you, similar to Tork and Sawyer in Iowa. What does that mean to you, that next generation on the farm?
Well, certainly the next generation on the farm. I mean, I'm not sure who quite, it's another chance allowed, I guess. Certainly we wouldn't be doing we would be taking a different direction if that wasn't the case. I have 3 kids. All 3 worked on the farm growing up. They've all pressure washed. They've all helped in the barn. We had we've backgrounded about 300 cattle a year as well. So that part of the operation we wound down to just give us some more time for this expansion. Jonathan went to the University of Guelph. He got a degree in general in agriculture, and he came back home, and we worked for a couple of years together. This expansion has been talked about probably for the last 5 or 6 years. And then we made a commitment to it and full guns ahead. So it's been my wife and I up till this point, and we've questioned our sanity several times. But anyway, at any rate, it's our retirement package for sure, I guess. It's nice to see, and he's got great interest in the hog, and he will run the farrowing barn. We're going to batch farrow in the farrowing barn at 625 sows, so it'll be 120 batch every 4 weeks is what it works. So the transition part of it, that's a whole different animal, but anyway, we've I think it was Adam talked about communication. Like, communication is not only the key to logistics and moving hogs, it's the key to getting along in a family. And sometimes it's not always pleasant, but communication is communication nonetheless. So anyway, that's kind of it simply.
And Tork, you're doing that, but you're going a different route as well. Like, Wanda uses social media. You guys are using the power of your podcast and your videos to educate the people what really goes on a farm, while creating your own brand at the same time. So your transition is on twofold, right? The media and the pig production.
Yeah. I mean, I guess kind of touch on your last question a little bit. I mean, when I came to the farm and decided I wanted to do this full time, I knew that, stuff changes all the time. Every industry changes, but back to kind of what Wanda was saying, my biggest thing was we're not showing people what's going on. We're not showing people the modern hog production, what that looks like. They don't know what a hog barn looks like. All they hear is factory farm, and they see PETA propaganda, and they don't see that it's just Dad and I in that barn working together. And I mean, that was the biggest thing I wanted to bring to the table, and that's why we started our social media brand. So kind of like the younger generation thing, that was kind of dad knew the hog business very well. I didn't, and I learned, and I brought social media to the table. And so our biggest mission is, ramp up production, grow our farm, but also show people ag, show people modern pig production, and use that as a side business to generate some income, promote ag, grow our farm. So it's all kind of, and it's gone way further than what I initially thought. We got a YouTube channel, got the podcasts, and we're just cranking out as much content as we can. So
you get to a point where, I'm kind of like, I can, when looking back, when the road looking back is longer than the road looking forward, it kind of changes your perspective a little bit. And, as you can tell, somebody's got the vision of the future. My vision is to do less and have somebody else do more. But the social media side of agriculture, whatever business you're in, is going to become one of the most important aspects for maybe not every producer, but I would say for every operation, as far as every integrator, because Wanda made the comment about consumers telling you what they want. The problem is, when it comes to agriculture, consumers don't know what they want. Someone is telling them what they should want. And that's 100% what happened in California. Is a lot of money was spent to, I'll air quote, educate the consumer the way they wanted them to be educated, because they didn't have a point of reference to know how these animals were housed, how they were fed, how they were cared for. And if you read the law, as it was written on the ballot, it's hard to read that and not say, well, yeah, I'm for that, because it sounds like you're protecting these animals. They didn't have a point of reference though. And we're in a bad spot, because we as an industry have spent a lot of time and a lot of money telling people and using print media, which is dead and dying. And talking to people that are already on our side that we don't need to talk to.
Mhm.
And that's easier than putting yourself out there. But, and we talk about this in our podcast, we end up talking about it about every week, I feel like right now, because whether you're talking about social media, politics, business, anything, I think one of the biggest trends in 2022 is authenticity. And you're seeing that because you're seeing the battle against Joe Rogan and politicians. And don't kid yourself, whatever side you are on the Joe Rogan deal, that would have never come to a head if it wasn't for the fact that somebody somewhere realized that as CNN's viewership kept dropping, this other guy having a different conversation, his viewership kept going up, and it scares the bejesus out of politicians and people that aren't what I would say authentic. And whether you're trying, and you see that on social media, is people that rent a plane to stand in front of, or rent a house to show that there's something that they're not. Those people are not getting traction today like they used to. It is the Joe Rogans, it's the Jordan Petersons, it's the people that are real. And that's what we need to do as an interest. I need to get off my soapbox, but as an industry, we have to be authentic. And if we are authentic, people may not understand why we do something, but they don't have to. When they see the authenticity, then they come to your side and say, well, I trust you because you showed me why you've done it. And I don't have to understand it 100% if I believe that you are being truthful with me. And what we're doing, that's what it's about, is trying to be authentic as best we can.
Our thing is just 100% transparency. I mean, that we are 100% transparent. If you go look at our YouTube videos, This Will Do Farm, we literally show you every day. We show us loading pigs, moving pigs, sorting pigs, pulling pigs, everything.
Yep.
And people fall in love with that. They fall in love with our farm and our operation because it's that family farm aspect. And I don't think modern pig production has done a good enough job showing that. And also, they also see the practices that we do aren't so bad. And it's not like the propaganda that, vegans and animal rights activists want to promote.
Right.
It's
right. I want to stand here and I want to clap my hands because you got it exactly. That is it. That is it. We got to be genuine and we got to be truthful. And that's exactly what I do. We don't need pretty little videos out there. We need to show exactly what happens. I'll just give one quick example here. This happened a couple of years ago. Our hog barns are next to some cropland. I was working up the cropland with a field cultivator. I thought both of the ends were up. I could probably the wrong, but both my wings were up. I realized that I had one wing down. So I come driving by the hog barns. Needless to say, I took out 4 feed bins. All right, so I could have ignored that, right? I mean, I felt bad. I had tears a whole bit. And it's like, you know what, Wanda? I said I was going to be genuine. I was going to be authentic. This is what happens. So I showed the video, the pictures, and you build trust. You build trust.
Well, we always say around here that when something bad happens, there's always one guy that is pissed off and one guy that's smiling. I'm usually the one that's mad, and he's usually the one with the camera because he thinks, oh, this is going to be good.
Yep.
This is going to be good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think and the other thing is, I think it's more like know who the farmer is. I think people always say, no, people want to know where their food comes from. Yes, but they also want to know who you are as a farmer, what you're like. Can you make me laugh? Are you family oriented? Like they want to see that too. Yeah, they want to see that.
Can I trust you?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. Completely agree.
We got 2 more things and then we'll get out of here. Adam, we talked a little bit about hiring in a candidate market, the Great Resignation, and rethinking employee management. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think just a few years ago, it was up to the candidate to convince us to hire them. We sort of would sit back and see if they were qualified. And I believe over the past year, the tables have changed a little bit to where, whenever you're interviewing somebody, you have to sell them on the idea of, like me, I got to sell them on the culture of Tosh pork. I've got to sell them on the idea of having an opportunity to move up and an idea of working in agriculture. Whereas, in West Tennessee, we don't have as many college students interested in working in swine as you do in Minnesota and Iowa. So, you got to be a little, think outside the box a little bit. And one thing that benefits us here is here in Henry, we have our feed mill, our slat plant, our fab shop. And, I can take somebody on a tour of a farm. They can see all that. They can get in a barn. And, while you're doing that, I can explain to them why I'm here, why I love my job, and introduce them to other employees that feel the same way. And so they sort of get an idea of the culture you have, and, they're interested in becoming part of it. And as far as the Great Resignation, I think that goes back to in the past, I'm sure everybody's heard this, is that everybody is replaceable. And so now everybody's heard that, they're like, well, I'm going to go somewhere else because there's all this opportunity now. And there's so much opportunity to work at home where you have the work-life balance. And, a lot of people think that balance works out more for life and work whenever you have some time remotely where you don't have to get up and go to work. And so with that, it just goes back to how you interact with your employees. I think Tork and Sawyer were saying genuine and authentic. You got to be the same way with your employees, because if you're not genuine with them, they're going to see through it and they're going to go somewhere else and work because of all the opportunity they have right now.
So I'm reading a book right now called 10% Happier from Dan Harris at ABC News. And the question I usually think about is like, how do we sell 10% more pork? The butchers I talk to, they're saying pork's kind of behind in what's selling. So, I think like, how do we sell 10% more pork? So the question is, I'm going to ask everybody just their quick opinion before we wrap up. Can we count on industry groups to adequately educate and promote our product? Do producers need their own promotion and education for pork? Or do we need to launch a new pork brand that gets people excited to buy pork? Like, how do we market this better? I'll start with you, Mark. Do we need a new pork brand, or what do we need to do to sell more pork?
I don't know if we need a new brand. Certainly in Ontario, the checkoff fees go to Ontario Pork, and Ontario Pork has been the overseer of, various marketing programs, put pork on your fork and so on and so forth. I think you're going to see, as some people have alluded to, the success is going to come, or greater success is going to come to those who are innovative. And just on that whole topic, we just sent a couple of our culled gilts that didn't make the cut for sows to a local butcher to experiment with sausage, to try to brand, find a market for our culled sows, to brand them as our sausage to direct market. And so from that point of view, I think there's an opportunity. I see fairly large farms take advantage of some opportunities with direct marketing. It's more work. It's hard to establish a brand. And you have to be, as Tork and Sawyer were saying, you have to be authentic and you have to be transparent. So it's a big ask, but I think there's a big reward for it. You see, most of the genetic companies now are going to a direct sire to try to the mainstream sort of your commercial herds to look at changing the texture of that finished product to a little more marbled, hence a little more taste. So I think the industry will move towards what moves more pork, and the producers are going to have a large part of that, I think, because it's just like everybody's mentioned here when they're talking about their podcasts. It's the producers are behind this veiled curtain, and we're just as scared to pull back the curtain as we are someone else to pull it back. It needs to be more open and transparent, and people that ask hard questions shouldn't be frowned upon. You need to be able to answer tough questions, because the industry is not for the faint of heart. So that's anyway, my 2 cents, I guess.
Melissa?
Well, I think I don't know, like Mark said, I don't think you necessarily need to rebrand pork, but you've got a quality product, it kind of speaks for itself. My husband, for years was a direct marketing, direct advertising, door-to-door, business to business, and that's still what we use today. I mean, he's done restaurant, business to business, door to door, just, and if you got a quality product, I think it just sells itself. And then you get to meet the farmer too. It's more authentic when you get to meet the person that's raising your food. So I don't think it needs to be rebranded. I think you just need a good product, and it is going to have to be more direct marketing, and
So what about you, Wanda? Because I know like the associations are doing a lot of work on this. And when we talk about a brand, I know Genesis promotes better tasting pork. And I'm more thinking outside the box of like if somebody produces their own bacon and that brand is famous because of that, the branding behind the bacon, or something, just something outside the box like that, or in general, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was kind of thinking about that here. So, I'm just my background. I've actually been on the pork board at Minnesota. Just recently, a couple of years ago, I come off the board after 6 years. So I'm very much a supporter of that, because I feel like they have a much louder voice than I do individually. But having said that, I do think we need to come back to what the consumer wants. Just a brief story here. So we've been raising hogs for a very long time. Go back to 1978, right? We had hogs outside. In the winter, we had a much different hog back then, because we had to have a hog that could withstand Minnesota winters. A fatty hog, we needed that. But then consumers' taste changed in the early 80s. They said, we don't want fatty pork anymore. We want lean. Lean is healthy. So all our genetics changed, the way we raise pigs, so that we could raise that lean pig. We're still there. I mean, as a producer, we sell all of our animals to Hormel. And really, it's the meat packer that's going to determine what type of pork that we raise. Because if we were to sell an animal that is fatty, we would get a discount on the price we would receive. So, once that changes, where those parameters aren't there, that says, okay, we're going to discount your price by X% because your pigs are too fatty. They've got to change that. Again, we raise pigs a little bit differently than what Melissa does. I love what Melissa's doing. We may end up doing something like that here, because we are small, we're independent. It's getting harder and harder to be that independent small producer. It really is. And we're looking at that next generation also on our farm. So that might be something there. But again, I think as organizations, we need to get closer to what the consumer wants. And I do believe that the consumer wants a tastier piece of pork with some of that marbling in there. So.
Shane?
Yeah, I think branding is very important. In 2008, my father and a number of other pig farmers came together to set up their own brand. So it's called Truly Irish, and it has been very successful. It's a premium product. The motto is that we don't compromise quality over profit. And it has grown from not just pig meat products, not just pork and bacon, but the brand itself, Truly Irish, it's very strong marketing. So now there's a range of other products that are produced under that brand, including, milk, dairy products like butter and cheese and so on. So from my own personal perspective and experience, branding is very, very important. And whether it's something to look at per state, like Minnesota pork, branded Minnesota pork, or branded Ohio pork, or something like that, then could be worth looking at. But also our marketing board's very, very important. Here we have Borbia, who are the Irish Food Board, and just last week, they've launched a very, very aggressive pork campaign across both print media and digital media here in Ireland. So I've seen that they have had front page adverts on the main Sunday newspapers and things like that. So, the marketing boards like that are still very, very important. But I think it's definitely a coordinated stakeholder approach where the producers, the marketing boards, and everyone come together and discuss what options there are to promote the consumption of pork. Yeah.
What do you think, Adam? How do we sell 10% more pork?
How do we sell 10% more pork? That's a hard question. But, I think you were talking about earlier about the producers getting out and voicing what we do so that the general public hears from us. And that in the past, we haven't been great at that, because I believe that, in the pork industry, everybody's always working. We don't have time. We just assume that everybody is on the same path as we are and understand what's going on. And so I think more of stuff like this, getting out there and everybody hearing from people who are actually in the industry instead of from people who are supposed to be in the know and know what's going on, instead of actually people who are out there doing it. And right now you see a lot of, anytime you go into Lowe's or Walmart, you see a lot of pellet grills. And I think that's a big push for your ribs, your Boston butts, stuff like that. Anytime you turn on the TV, there's always a barbecue show on. So I think there is a lot of push that is heading that way. I don't personally own a pellet grill. I have a wood grill, but they're very popular and a lot of people use them. And I think that that's one way that it's getting to the mainstream of making it friendly for everybody to be able to do it.
I think there's lots of layers to it, because there's a local cattle operation here called Enright Beef. I think you probably know them, Mark.
Yep.
And so they branded their business, and we buy Enright Beef. So I think on the pork side of things, when I talk to the local butcher, he sells a lot of bacon, but not much pork. So who needs to educate the consumer on why they need to buy pork? Or do we need to do something like invest in specialized glass casing in butcher shops to make pork look better, to educate people better? Like, what do we need to stand out to make it sexy? Because I'll put in a custom order for pork loins and all these custom orders at the butcher, but the general consumer, if they go to the grocery store, they just see pork chops that aren't necessarily appealing. So there's a lot of layers of education that we need to do, from whether it's a celebrity chef or investing in a restaurant, a high-end restaurant with pork, or how do we, at the very end user of the butcher shop, how do we make that position better? So Tork and Sawyer, let's finish with your thought on, how do we sell more pork? Do producers need their own promotion and education? What's your final thoughts here?
I think everyone made very similar points. I think that the organization, we all need to do it collectively, but the organizations, they need a face. The packing plants, they need a face. We need a face on the product that's at the grocery store. We need a farmer. If Triumph was smart, if Hormel was smart, they would put somebody on the package, and not the Red Barn, family farm image that has been portrayed in this industry for so long, but the real authentic farm, a picture of one of us in a hog barn or something, and put a QR code, and you scan that QR code and it takes you to all the social media links of them promoting agriculture. And the breed thing, yeah, we need to get back to a fattier hog. If you want it to look more appealing in the butcher shop, it's back to what Melinda said. Well, he's got the package hold up right there.
Yeah, There you go.
That's exactly what we need.
Hey, and you guys made the cut because as you were talking, Sawyer pulled your bio up on Instagram and it was on there. So kudos to you. You guys are getting your truly Irish out there. But I'll give you something simple. I was just thinking about this. So if I was the National Pork Board, I would go through, if there is a barbecue guy on social media that has over X number of followers, and I don't know what that number is, that guy should not pay. That guy should not pay for any cut of pork that he barbecues on that channel. They should give those guys all the meat they want, because that goes back to seeing a recipe card at Fairway is not going to make somebody buy that pork chop and take it home. But if you see Malcolm Reed, I'll use Malcolm Reed as an example. He's a big barbecue guy here in the United States. But if you see Malcolm Reed cook up pork chops and you can get that recipe and you can watch him do it 8 times, stop it, pause it, back it up, you can do it just as good as he can. And he'll tell you that. Those people do more to promote our product than anything that the National Pork Board's doing. And they need to embrace that instead of digging their heels in and trying to be whatever they're trying to be and getting former sitcom stars to read like it's Christmas morning. I don't know what that whole deal's about, but that doesn't make me want to go buy a pork chop. They need to.
Yeah, that's what Adam said. I mean, that culture, barbecue culture, smoking culture, grilling is becoming huge.
And that's it. That's right in our wheelhouse.
And I do agree. We need a fattier hog across the board, not just pasture raised, commercial too. We need a fatter hog because that's the way people eat a pulled pork on a Sunday with their family. They don't, the whole pork line, eat lean. I'm going to go food prep my meals and go to the gym. That's really not what pork's at. Pork is, I'm going to enjoy this weekend barbecue and I'm going to pig out.
Yeah. And price, if it comes down to they're going to buy for taste, if it tastes good, they don't care what they don't care what it costs if it tastes good. We've been talking this game for a long time, and look at the price of beef. And beef has no demand problem, but it's basically 2 markets. It's ground beef and it's steak, and there's nothing in between. And pork can be the same way as far as I'm concerned. It can be breakfast sausage, pork butt, bacon, and ribs, and the rest of it, just grind it.
Any final words before we sign off?
Great discussion.
Yeah, I
Glad to be a
really
part of
enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks to the entire panel for making the time today on the swinetv.com producer hot stove report, and visit swineweb.com for more information.